There once was a king who had everything a man could desire. His kingdom stretched beyond the horizon. His armies were undefeated. His treasury overflowed with gold. His name inspired both admiration and fear. And over time, he began to believe something dangerous. He believed it was all because of him. At first, it was subtle. When his generals won battles, he took the praise. When his farmers produced abundance, he claimed it was his leadership. When neighboring nations remained at peace, he assumed it was his reputation that held them back. He stopped listening to counsel. He stopped asking questions. He stopped doubting himself. And that was the beginning of his fall. Because pride does not arrive loudly. It whispers. It tells a man he is self-made. It convinces him he no longer needs correction. It blinds him to the contributions of others. The king began dismissing his advisors. One by one, the wisest voices in his court grew silent. Not because they lacked wisdom, but because he no longer valued it. One evening, an old counselor, who had served the throne for decades, approached him carefully. "Your Majesty," the old man said, "a kingdom stands not because of a crown, but because of balance. Pride tips the scales." The king laughed. "Balance," he said. "Look around you. There has never been more order, more wealth, more strength. I am the balance." The old man lowered his head and said nothing more. If this story feels familiar already, pause for a moment. Pride rarely feels like arrogance from the inside. It feels like certainty. It feels like confidence. It feels justified. Ask yourself quietly, where in your life have you stopped listening? The years passed. The king grew more isolated. He no longer walked among his people. He no longer questioned his own decisions. He surrounded himself with those who agreed with him. Agreement became more important than truth, and truth began to disappear from the palace walls. Then came the drought. At first, it seemed minor, a poor harvest season, nothing more. But the farmers had warned him months earlier about failing irrigation systems. He dismissed them. The engineers had requested funds to repair the canals. He ignored them. Why? Because he believed the kingdom was too strong to be threatened by something so small. Pride is that. It convinces a man that small cracks will never become fractures. The drought worsened. Food became scarce. Trade slowed. Whispers spread among the people. But instead of admitting miscalculation, the king blamed neighboring lands. He blamed weather. He blamed fate. He never blamed himself. And when unrest began to grow, he responded the only way pride knows how, with force. Soldiers were sent to silence dissent. Taxes were increased to compensate for losses. Punishments became harsher. But control is not the same as stability. And fear is not the same as respect. One night, as the kingdom starved and the treasury drained, the old counselor returned one final time. "Your Majesty," he said softly, "a king who cannot humble himself will eventually be humbled by circumstance." This time, the king did not laugh, because for the first time, he felt fear. Not fear of enemies, but fear of losing control. And within a year, he lost everything. The treasury emptied. The army weakened. The people revolted. Allies withdrew their support. And the man who once believed he was untouchable stood alone in an empty throne room. The crown still rested on his head, but the kingdom beneath it had collapsed. He fled the palace under darkness, stripped of power, stripped of title, stripped of certainty. And for the first time in his life, he was just a man. No throne, no applause, no agreement, no illusion, just silence. It was in that silence that he finally understood. The kingdom had not fallen in a single season. It had fallen the day he stopped listening. It had fallen the day he believed he was above correction. It had fallen the day pride replaced humility. He spent years in exile, living among the same people he once ruled. He listened, he worked, he observed, and slowly, he began to see what he could not see from the throne. A leader does not rise by elevating himself above others. He rises by serving something greater than himself. Pride isolates. Humility connects. Pride blinds. Humility clarifies. Pride builds walls. Humility builds foundations. Let me ask you something. Where in your life are you sitting on a throne built from ego? Is it in your relationships, your career, your habits, Your refusal to admit fault? Pride does not only destroy kingdoms, it destroys marriages, friendships, opportunities, potential. The strongest men are not those who never fall. They are those who can kneel without breaking. The king eventually returned, not as a conqueror, but as a servant leader. And the people accepted him, not because of his crown, but because of his change. He ruled differently. He questioned more. He listened longer. He corrected himself quickly. He valued truth over praise. And the kingdom flourished once again, not because he became weaker, but because he became wiser. If this story resonates with you, don't just let it pass. Reflect on it. Comment one area where pride may be holding you back. Growth begins with honesty. Pride feels powerful in the moment, but humility builds power that lasts. Remember this: a man does not lose everything in a single day. He loses it slowly. Every time he refuses correction. Every time he rejects accountability. Every time he chooses ego over growth. Master yourself before you are humbled by life, because life will humble you. The only question is whether you choose it willingly or learn it painfully. Stay grounded. Stay teachable. Stay resilient.